Tonight, I'd like to bring you back to a narrow office beneath a war hospital in 1944, where the walls sweat, the typewriters clatter endlessly, and your fingers never stop moving. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. You haven't seen the sun in days. But upstairs, men return from the front lines, and someone has to write the words that keep them going. Have you ever watched someone receive praise and felt something twist inside your chest? Not because you envy them, not because you think they didn't deserve it, but because somehow you felt the spotlight landed on the wrong person, and you didn't even have the words to explain why. You don't have to answer. Just listen and let another lifetime speak for you. This is sleep through lifetimes. Each night, we let the current of time carry us, while the mind drifts lightly across the surface of memory. Whether you're already comfortable or still finishing something, that's perfectly fine. No need to analyze or focus. Just let everything unfold as it is. Where and at what time are you listening from? Drop a line below. Perhaps someone far away is journeying with you right now. Before we set off, I don't need likes or subscribes. I only hope that if you drift off midway, your sleep will be calm and your heart as light as a leaf. All right, let's allow the road ahead to tell the rest. You were born in a small Pennsylvania town in the fall of 1921, tucked between coal smoke and quiet front porches. You're the second daughter in a row of 5 children, and from the start, you learn not to take up too much space. You're the one who fetches the scissors without being asked. The one who hears your mother sigh from the kitchen and appears with a folded dishcloth. Without a word. People call it intuition. You don't call it anything. You just listen. Your father isn't unkind, but like many fathers of that era, he believes girls should be helpful, not heard. When you speak, he nods absent-mindedly. When your brother speaks, he asks follow-up questions. You begin to internalize something you don't yet have words for. Being needed is not the same as being noticed. At school, you're the quiet girl with excellent penmanship. You love the sound of fountain pens, scratching paper, the symmetry of margins, the click of proper spacing. The nuns at the local Catholic school praise your handwriting, your posture, your patience, but never your ideas. Still, you smile politely. It feels good to be useful. By the time you're 16, you've already memorized everyone's preferences. How your mother likes the laundry folded. Which of your sisters is closest to tears? What your father means when he clears his throat a certain way. You become fluent in silence. It earns you trust, but little else. One of your teachers once said, "She's the kind of girl who'll make a very good assistant someday." You're not sure why that stung. At the time, you didn't even know what else to dream of. Your family doesn't talk about college, not for girls anyway. When you turn 18, The world is changing faster than you can keep up with. War looms louder each day. In the kitchen, the radio updates carry tension like thick soup, slow, heavy, inescapable. You don't understand global politics, but you understand tone of voice. You hear it in every broadcaster's clip delivery. Something is coming. And then, one day, the letter arrives. Not for you, for your older brother. He's drafted. There's no ceremony about it. Just a manila envelope with instructions and a train ticket. He leaves 2 weeks later with a duffel bag and a handshake from your father. No one cries. It's not allowed. You see your mother stay up all night, the day after he's gone, knitting something she'll never send. You know then, this war will eat things quietly. By the time the Women's Army Corps starts accepting volunteers in your region, you're 19. You sign up before you tell your parents. You don't ask permission. You just go to the courthouse and wait in line in your Sunday shoes, shaking quietly. You're not trying to be brave. You're just tired of being invisible. At the exam, a nurse compliments your neat handwriting. A week later, your placement arrives. You're being sent to Fort Des Moines, Iowa, for training in clerical service. Your father is stunned into silence. Your mother presses her lips together. No one hugs you goodbye. But when the bus pulls away, you realize, for the first time, you're not waiting for someone else to choose you. Training isn't glamorous. You're crammed into shared bunks with dozens of other girls, each with her own reason for enlisting. Some want adventure. Some want to follow a lover. Some just want to matter. You don't explain your reason out loud, but you know it by heart. It comes to you during a drill, when your boot slips and your shoulder aches. I want to do something that doesn't disappear when I stop touching it. You pass your classes. You master Morse code. You learn to type blindfolded. Your speed earns praise. Again, not your words, just your speed. But you tell yourself it's enough. One night in the mess hall, a girl from Chicago laughs at your quiet voice and calls you ghostwriter. You don't take it as an insult. In fact, something about it feels oddly accurate. You've spent your whole life making things easier for others. Why should this be any different? And then comes the assignment. You're being sent to a field office just outside Reims, France. The job: drafting citations and military commendations for soldiers recommended for medals. It's not frontline work. It's not glamorous. But it's important. Or so you're told. You fold the orders into your duffel and think, even if no one remembers me, maybe they'll remember what I wrote. You don't realize, not yet, how much those words will haunt you later. The journey to France feels like a film reel flickering too fast. One moment, you're staring at the chipped windows of Fort Des Moines. The next, you're crossing the Atlantic, seasick beside crates of paperwork and crates of women trying not to look afraid. When you arrive in Reims, everything smells like wet wool and cigarette smoke. Your uniform itches. The cold is a constant whisper in your bones. But none of that matters, because you're here now. You've crossed the sea. You're part of something larger than yourself. They assign you to a clerical post under the adjutant general's branch, deep in a converted cellar, where the only light comes from yellowed bulbs and the narrowest slit of a window. It feels like a basement of forgotten things. You're handed a desk, a clunky Underwood typewriter, and a stack of citation forms. No one tells you how to feel. You just begin. The work is mechanical, yet meticulous. Each commendation must be precise, names spelled right, units properly recorded, actions heroically described, but not too flowery. Bravery, after all, must sound factual. You're given examples to follow, and after a few days, your fingers memorize the rhythm. Sometimes, you don't even need to think. Exhibited extraordinary valor under fire. Disregarded personal safety to aid a wounded comrade. Acted without hesitation in the face of grave danger. You begin to recognize phrases like old lullabies. You even invent your own shorthand so you can type faster. Some of the girls joke that you could write a medal citation in your sleep. You probably could, but here's the strange thing. The more lives you describe, the less you feel your own. Your world becomes a blur of carbon copies and glory you'll never taste. Still, you don't complain. That's not how you were raised. And besides, there's something oddly soothing about the rhythm of it all. The clack of the keys, the smell of ink, the routine. One of your coworkers, Doris, is from Boston. She wears red lipstick even underground and talks like her sentences are trying to win a foot race. One day, she nudges your arm and says, "You ever notice how we're the ones writing the medals, but nobody writes M for us?" You chuckle, politely. You don't have the heart to tell her you've thought the same thing. Nearly every day. Weeks pass, then months. Outside, the war keeps changing shape. Some days, the soldiers come back laughing. Other days, they don't come back at all. You hear the stories before the rest of the world. You see the casualty numbers in raw columns long before they become obituaries. One afternoon, you're handed a recommendation for a Bronze Star. The soldier's report is vague. The handwriting on the field notes is smudged, but the account is moving. He shielded another man from shrapnel, even after being wounded himself. You rewrite the event in words that feel more human than heroic. You even include a small phrase about how he was known to sing under pressure. A detail pulled from a footnote in the report. You read it back and think, yes, this feels like truth. But when the final form is returned to you for signature writing, you notice something. The soldier's name isn't the same one you typed. Someone upstairs has switched it. An error? Maybe. Or maybe not. You're not sure. You bring it up, gently, to your superior officer. He barely glances at the form. They both served in the same unit, same patrol. It's fine. Just process it. You stare at the page. So this medal, the words you crafted, the moment you tried to honor, will go to someone else. You tell yourself it doesn't matter. The war is bigger than paperwork. But something tugs in your chest. That night, you lie in your cot, the cold biting through your wool blanket, and imagine someone pinning a medal to a uniform that never earned it. At least not in the way the letter says. You picture the smile, the cameras, the applause. And somewhere in the corner of your mind, a voice asks, was that supposed to be mine? Not the medal, the moment, the truth. But you push the thought away. You've been pushing thoughts away your whole life. Doris notices something in your silence the next day. She says, don't let the brass get to you. We're all just ghostwriters here. She laughs like it's a joke, but it lands like a gravestone. Sometimes, when the others go on break, you stay back. You reread certain letters, the ones with strange beauty in them. A soldier who thanked a nurse for humming while she stitched him up. A sergeant who cried when his dog tags were returned by a child. You don't know why you remember these details, but you do. You wonder if anyone will remember you. You never complain, not even to yourself. You just type. Type and file. File and forget. Forget and begin again. And deep inside, something you can't name begins to curl, like paper near flame, not rage, not grief. Just something unspoken, a kind of ache that doesn't make a sound, but never leaves. It's strange how a life can feel full of motion and yet completely still. You don't remember the exact day the letters began to blend into one another. Maybe it was after the second winter. Maybe it was the moment your fingers started finishing the sentences before your eyes even read them. But one morning, something shifts. It's a gray Tuesday. You've barely had your tea. Your superior hands you a bundle of citation drafts for quality review. It's part of a new audit system. They want a final pair of eyes before signatures are issued. You flip through the first few quickly. Standard bravery commendations. Then one catches your eye. It's beautifully written, not the usual formula. It flows. Details placed exactly where they need to be. Sharp but soft, clear but human. There's a rhythm to the lines, a melody in the phrasing. And suddenly, it hits you. You wrote this. You wrote this days ago. But something's changed. At the top of the page, in firm black ink, is a different name. Not the name of the soldier from the original report, not even a name from the same unit. You blink. At first, you think it's a clerical error, common enough. You flip to the original field note. It's missing. The whole reference file has been reassigned. In its place is a simple stamp, approved for submission. You swallow, Hard, you remember this report. A young medic, barely 21, who stayed behind in a collapsed shelter to keep a wounded man company through the night, not to save him, just to keep him from dying alone. It had moved you so deeply that you'd rewritten it 3 times. You even added a line that wasn't required. Displayed not just courage under fire, but compassion in silence. Now, that moment is going to someone else, a higher ranking officer, one who wasn't even stationed in that region. You tell yourself not to feel anything. You've been trained in quiet, in deference. But your chest tightens like a fist. You bring it up, gently, of course, to your commander. He doesn't even look up from his folder. There was a decision made. It came from above, not your concern. Corporal, you stand there for a moment too long. He finally looks at you. Is there a problem? You want to say yes. You want to scream that truth matters, that memory matters, that this boy, who hummed lullabies to a dying man, deserves to be remembered, that someone deserves to know his name. But all you do is shake your head. No, sir, no problem. You walk back to your desk. You sit down, and you do nothing for 5 full minutes. There's a piece of pencil laid on the floor. You stare at it like it might offer you an answer. You're not angry. Not really. It's something smaller, sadder, a feeling like being slowly erased, while still alive. That night, Doris finds you outside, standing by the back steps, holding a cigarette you never light. She doesn't ask what's wrong. She just says, "You know, sometimes I think if we ever stopped doing the work, the whole war would unravel." You nod. But you're thinking something different. You're thinking, if I disappeared, would the war even notice? The next day, you type with perfect accuracy. But something's changed. The pages feel heavier. The words feel stolen. You begin to notice how often your best lines get rerouted. How certain names appear more than once on medals they never earned. How the boys who write home with trembling honesty are rarely the ones who get remembered. And slowly, without even realizing it, you begin to shrink, not physically, but inward. You stop making conversation during breaks. You stop joking with Doris. You start writing fewer flourishes, just the required lines, just what they ask for. You become efficient, invisible, and yet you can't stop comparing. Every medal pinned on the wrong chest feels like another inch shaved off your voice. Each time you hear a name read aloud that you know didn't match the story, you feel your own name dim just a little more. One morning, someone pins a citation you wrote on the wall. Everyone claps. The recipient is a major from Boston. The girls swoon. Doris says, "Would you look at that chin? If I'd known medals made men that shiny, I'd have started typing with perfume." You smile, but it doesn't reach your eyes, because you know that story. It wasn't his, it was yours. And you wonder, Not if you'll ever be recognized, but whether your real self even exists outside the words you give away. You tell yourself it doesn't matter. That medals are metal, not meaning. That recognition is just decoration. That war is war, and nothing about it is fair. But something inside you keeps insisting otherwise. It's a quiet part, small and persistent. The same part that watched your older brother get a handshake and your mother get silence. The same part that whispered, when you were 10, maybe if I do everything right, someone will finally see me. That voice is louder now, and it doesn't want a spotlight. It just wants justice, a name placed where it belongs. You begin to carry it with you. This ache, this flicker of disbelief, like a splinter under the skin. Not fatal, not obvious, but impossible to ignore. You keep working, because that's what you've always done. But one afternoon, you see your name printed on a memo that's been duplicated for circulation. Nothing important, just an internal update, but they've spelled it wrong. Twice. You stand there staring at the page. Your name, misspelled, distributed. You wonder how many more mistakes exist unnoticed, under someone else's spotlight. The funny thing is, when you go to point it out, you hesitate. Something stops you. Not fear of reprimand, but something older. What if correcting it makes you look difficult, or proud, or ungrateful? So you say nothing. Again, a week later, a small ceremony is held upstairs. 2 soldiers returning from a special mission are receiving commendations. You aren't required to attend. But Doris insists. You wrote half these citations. You should be there. You stand in the back, quiet, straight-backed, polished shoes. The commander reads from one of your reports, word for word, even your punctuation. You can tell. The cadence is yours, the pauses, the phrasing. You watch the soldier step forward, chest out, expression composed, as the bronze star is pinned on his uniform. Cameras click. People clap. He looks grateful, proud, and entirely unfamiliar. You know he wasn't the one from the original report, and yet he smiles just like you imagined the real man would. For a moment, something surreal happens. It's almost as if you're watching a play. You wrote the script. You choreographed the moment. And now, someone else is living it. On stage, in uniform, with better lighting. You wonder what it would feel like to stand there. To have the truth stick to you, instead of sliding off. To be the face people applaud, not the hand behind the curtain. After the ceremony, Doris turns to you. That was your citation, wasn't it? You nod, just barely. She sighs. Well, at least he looked handsome holding it. She chuckles, then leans in. I swear, if one more man gets praised for something you wrote, I'm starting a war of my own. You laugh. Sort of. But it doesn't last. That night, you sit at your bunk and pull out one of the carbon copies you've been secretly keeping. Just a line or two here and there. Nothing official, just words that felt honest. You read one in the dim light. He stayed behind in the burning hut, not for orders, but because someone had to hold the boy's hand as the world ended. You remember writing that, and you remember the letter it came from, and you remember that the man it was written about never made it into the records. Too low ranking, no eyewitness, no official commendation. Gone. Forgotten, except for this, your line, your words, your voice. You sit there for a long time, fingers tracing the edge of the page. And you ask yourself the question you never dared before. If all the stories I've written belong to others, who's writing mine? There's no answer. Just the faint shuffle of boots outside, and the way the candle flickers like it's trying not to be noticed. You lie down, you close your eyes, but the scene replays again and again. That soldier smiling, your words in his mouth, applause ringing in ears that aren't yours, and it hits you. This is what comparison feels like. Not jealousy, not bitterness, but the ache of watching someone else carry your story into the light, while you're left holding only the shadow. You begin drafting less with your heart and more with your hands. There's no room for poetry now, not when truth floats away so easily. Not when recognition feels like a lottery ticket with someone else's name on it. Still, every now and then, your old instinct returns. You catch yourself slipping softness into a citation. A word like tender or steady or unshaken. Words that don't shout but stay. Words that carry weight without fanfare. But each time you do, something inside you whispers, "What's the point?" One day, during a routine form transfer, you notice a second error. This time, it's not a medal, just a commendation letter being sent to the wrong family. You flag it. You bring it to your officer. You even prepare a correction memo. He sighs. We don't have time to chase paper ghosts. It's already been sent. You stand there, still holding the letter, and you think maybe that's what I am to them. A paper ghost. You go back to your desk. You file the correction memo anyway, quietly, without expectation. You don't even sign it. It starts to become a habit, catching errors, tracing forgotten names, gently putting stories back where they belong. You do it with the precision of someone making no waves, asking for no thanks, and still the comparison lingers, not only with soldiers, but with other girls. Doris, with her lipstick and laughter, is transferred to a post near Paris. She leaves you a note that smells like lavender and says, "Try not to become a wall, okay? Walls keep people safe, but they don't get hugged." You fold the note and tuck it under your pillow. You don't write back. You're afraid of what might spill out. There's a new girl at the office, Eleanor. She's efficient, polished, and doesn't hesitate to take credit when a commander compliments a citation. You watch her glide through the ranks. She smiles like applause is her birthright. You don't hate her. You just don't know how to be her. Because something in you still believes that if you work quietly, diligently, honestly, someone will notice. But they never do. The strange thing is, every time someone else gets praise for something you started, it doesn't just sting. It confirms a fear you've always had quietly in the corners of your chest. That may be the reason they never chose you, is because there was never anything worth choosing. You bury yourself in tasks. You become the one people rely on when things get chaotic. You're the girl who never drops the ball, who stays late, who rewrites half-finished drafts without complaint. And slowly, people stop seeing you as a person. You become a solution, a function. Can you handle this? She's quick with retypes. Just give it to her. She won't mind. You nod. Always. It's ironic, really. All your life, you thought comparison meant looking up at someone else. But now, it feels like people look through you, and you begin to feel like a ghost of your own body. Present, helpful, and entirely forgettable. Then comes the real test. A special commendation arrives, direct from Allied Command. A major wants a memorial letter written for a fallen sergeant. You're handed the notes. Scribbled, barely legible. But the story is there. The sergeant sacrificed himself to cover a retreat. Not ordered, not expected, just chose to. Left his own post to shield a group of wounded men trying to crawl out of a trench. The details are blurry, but something in you knows this deserves to be remembered. So you stay late. You pour yourself into the draft. Not grandiose, not dramatized, just truthful. You even add a final line, soft and simple. He did not die to be seen. He died so others could live. You turn it in. 3 days later, the final version returns. It's mostly intact, except your line is gone. In its place, Hay gave his life with honor, bravery, and the spirit of Allied excellence. It's fine, technically. But it isn't human. You sit at your desk, blinking. Not angry, not sad, just empty. Like you finally let yourself hope someone might see you in the work. And instead, they reached for the next soldier, shaped phrase, and moved on. That night, you fold your original draft into an envelope and place it in your coat pocket. You don't know why. Just in case someone ever asks what really happened, no one does. The days pass. Your posture straightens. Your voice softens. You become the girl with perfect form and no edges, and inside a quiet truth takes root. If you're always the one behind the curtain, you start to forget what sunlight feels like. Spring arrives late that year, like a letter misplaced in transit. The air is still heavy with soot, and the trees outside the base bloom reluctantly, as if unsure whether beauty still belongs here. One morning, you're called to assist in a medal ceremony, not as an attendee, not even as a writer, just to help set up chairs and double check the printed programs. The brass is coming, they say, best behavior. Neat bun. Smile like someone might remember it. You do what's asked. Of course you do. They hold the ceremony in a courtyard behind the administration building. You've never seen so many polished shoes in one place. Cameras click like insect wings. Uniforms gleam under the late morning light, and for once, the sun doesn't hide behind clouds. You stand to the side, invisible by design. You're not even listed as staff on the printed program, though you helped write half the words the commander is about to speak. And then it happens. A citation begins. Your sentence, word for word, the one you agonized over, the one you reshaped until it felt like breathing. You hear it fall from the commander's mouth like a stone into water. No mention of you, no pause to honor the hand that chose those exact syllables. The soldier receiving the medal steps forward. You freeze. It's the same man whose name was swapped months ago. The same one who smiled just like you imagined, except now he's looking directly at the crowd. Proud, grateful. He doesn't know. Of course he doesn't. You feel your stomach fold in on itself. He pins the moment to his chest like it always belonged there. People clap. You do, too. It's the polite thing, the expected thing. And while your hands move, your mind whispers, "That smile was never mine, but I know exactly how I wrote it." Afterward, someone offers leftover sandwiches. A photographer snaps candid shots of the crowd. You're in one of them, blurred in the background, unnamed. Later, when the newspaper clipping arrives, you cut it out, not because of pride, just proof that your words existed somewhere outside your own head. You tuck it into the back of a notebook, beneath layers of unmailed letters, draft copies, and half-scribbled phrases that never found the right envelope. Doris sends a postcard from Paris, a joke about rations, a lipstick print at the bottom. She signs it, "To the ghostwriter of the century. Hope someone's finally reading your story." You smile. For real, this time. But then that night, the ache returns. Not sharp, just familiar. It's the same ache that curls in your chest every time someone else gets praised. It doesn't feel like envy. It feels like being misfiled in your own life. You lie in your bunk, eyes open, heart folded tight. You don't want applause. You never did. You just want the story to land where it belongs, to be carried by the person who lived it, to not have to wonder, for once, was that moment meant for me? And they just gave it away. And maybe worse, what if no one ever meant to give it to you at all? You fall asleep that night with a draft clutched in your hands. Not a medal, not a letter, just a sentence, yours, unclaimed. The war ends like a curtain lowering without applause. There is no grand finale, just a quiet shift. Fewer dispatches, fewer trains, fewer funerals. The typing pool begins to thin out. Girls start going home. You stay longer than most. Not because anyone asks you to, just because no one tells you to leave. Eventually, the orders arrive. you're being discharged. Honorably, respectfully, and with nothing more than a stamped certificate and a lukewarm handshake. Back in Pennsylvania, the air smells like laundry and coal again. The streets haven't changed, but you have. You walk past the bakery where you used to buy bread on Sundays. The woman behind the counter doesn't recognize you. You don't blame her. You barely recognize yourself. Your mother hugs you once, tightly, silently, then goes back to folding sheets. Your father nods, pats your shoulder, and asks how many words you can type per minute now. You tell him, though you want to say, "That's not the most interesting thing I brought home." You try to slip back into life. You find a clerical job downtown. Predictable, orderly, anonymous. You take it. Because there's rent and routine, and it's quiet. The men return from war in uniforms and with stories. People ask them questions. They get parades, flags, recognition. You get, "She was in the GO-AC, right? Oh, that's nice. Must have been such a noble support role." And every time someone says, "support," it feels like they're placing you a little further behind the curtain. You don't correct them. You've never liked the sound of your own protest. Years pass. You meet someone. He works in insurance. Kind, steady, grateful you're good at keeping things together. You marry. You have children. You become the organizer, the reminder, the scheduler. Your husband gets promoted. Your children win awards. You clap the loudest. But sometimes, in the quiet after the party, you stare at your hands and think, these are the same hands that wrote for ghosts. The ache never really leaves. Every now and then, when you see someone praised, at work, on the news, even in your own living room, you feel it again. Not jealousy. Never that. Just the ghost of a sentence you once wrote, now recited by someone else. To someone else, as if it had never passed through you. You start keeping notebooks again. Small ones. Just phrases. Half dreams. Things no one will read. You don't show them to your children. You don't even sign them. It's not about the spotlight. It's about the simple desire to be traced back to something, to be known for something that didn't belong to anyone else. You wonder, sometimes, if your life is just one long footnote to other people's headlines. One day, while helping your daughter with a school project, she asks who in your family was in the war. You pause, then say, "Your uncle." She nods, writes it down, then looks up. "What about you?" You hesitate, then smile. "I just helped with the words." She shrugs, goes back to coloring. And again, that same quiet question returns. Was that moment meant for me? And I let it go. Or worse, was it never mine to begin with? The years turn like slow pages in a book you forgot you were writing. You become the woman people describe as dependable. Not brilliant, not dazzling, just dependable. At church events, you organize the sign-up sheets. At work, You remember birthdays others forget. At home, your family calls you the glue. Glue is strong, invisible. It holds everything together. But it never gets framed. The children grow. Your husband retires early. And you keep going, quietly, without asking for much. But inside, the comparisons sharpen. Not because you want to compete, but because you want to understand. Why do others get remembered more easily? Why do some voices ring louder in rooms, even when they say less? Why do you still, after all these years, feel like you're waiting for someone to turn around and say, "Hey, wasn't that you?" You try to explain it once, over coffee, to an old friend from your typing pool days. She squints at you and says, "We all had our role. Don't go getting wistful now." So you drop it. You always do. But in the evenings, when the house settles and the walls sigh with old pipes and familiar silence, you catch yourself remembering faces, not just of people, but of stories. The boy who hummed, the girl who kissed envelopes before sealing them, the man who held the door for a wounded soldier, then didn't come back. You don't remember their names, but you remember what they meant, because you gave them their sentences. You gave them language. You gave them time, and still, no one ever gave it back. You watch your children build lives that feel more visible than yours ever did. One teaches, one designs clothing. Both are proud to say what they do. You love them for it. But it sharpens the question. If you disappeared, what line would be read at your ceremony? Your husband suggests taking a cruise. "You've always worked so hard," he says. You smile, grateful, but think, would I still matter if I stopped working hard? One evening, you attend a community award dinner. Your husband is being honored for his years of civic contribution. You helped organize the event, of course, designed the program, coordinated the seating, prepared the bios. They read a glowing speech about his dedication, about how he's always had someone by his side keeping the details smooth. Everyone claps, and you wonder if they know that speech, if they notice that tone, that quiet rhythm, because you wrote it. After the ceremony, someone says to you, "You must be so proud of him, always behind the scenes, huh?" You smile. Numbly? Yes, always. That night you lie awake, not from bitterness, not from regret, from fatigue. The kind that seeps into your bones when you've carried too many stories that never had your name on them. You reach into a drawer and pull out a notebook. One of the old ones. You flip through pages of unsentences, phrases left behind, lines no one heard, until you find one. A line you wrote in a draft you were told to trim for brevity. It says, "Some people live their whole lives inside the parentheses of other people's recognition." You close the book, and in that moment you realize that's what the comparison has always been. Not envy, not pride, but parentheses, a life written around the margins of someone else's punctuation. It happens on a Wednesday. You're sorting old mail, half of it junk, most of it misaddressed, when you spot an envelope with no return address, no postmark, just your name, handwritten, in the kind of script you used to see on war letters. You turn it over, expecting a flyer or maybe a church invitation. But inside is a letter. It begins simply. To whoever wrote that commendation in 44, thank you. Your heart stills. The letter goes on. The writer doesn't give their name. They just say they were a young private then. That one night, after a mission gone sideways, their commanding officer read a letter aloud. The one you had written, not to him, not for him, but the words had stayed. He says he doesn't remember the name it was addressed to. Doesn't even think the medal went to the right guy. But he remembers the line. He did not die to be seen. He died so others could live. He says it changed the way he saw the war, that it gave him something to hold on to, that, in a way, it saved him. You read the letter 3 times before you exhale. The 4th time, your hands begin to shake. Because for the first time, someone saw not the soldier, but the sentence. And by extension, they saw you. It's the smallest moment. No spotlight, no medal, just ink on paper. But it feels like sunlight after years of shadow. You sit in your kitchen, letter open on your lap, and think, so maybe it wasn't wasted. Maybe the words found their way after all. You don't reply. There's no address. But you fold the letter slowly, carefully, like you're wrapping a fragile truth. Later that evening, you take out the envelope you once saved, the draft you wrote and kept, the one that never made it into any archive. You place the anonymous letter beside it, and for the first time, you don't feel like a ghost. You feel like a bridge. Between memory and meaning, between silence and something that survived it. And you realize it wasn't about getting credit. It was about knowing the story landed where it needed to. You look at the words again, and they feel different now. They feel like home. That night, you sit on your front porch and watch the wind ripple through the leaves. The sun has just dipped below the houses. Everything is gold and soft and fading. And you think, maybe this is what peace feels like. Not being remembered by everyone, but being remembered by just one person who mattered. You begin to dream of typewriters again. Not the clunky, metallic frustration they once were, but softened, almost musical. Their keys dance in your mind like old piano notes. Your hands glide over them in sleep, no longer out of duty, but rhythm. In one dream, the ribbons never smudge, the ink never dries, and every sentence finds its rightful place. You're older now. The mirror shows it. The way your hands hesitate before gripping the stairs. The way your breath catches on a cold morning. But you no longer shrink when someone else is praised. There's a gentleness to the ache now. a familiarity, like an old scar that no longer throbs, but still hums on rainy days. You keep the letter in your bedside drawer, right beside your notebooks. You haven't told anyone about it, not even your children. Not because it's a secret, but because it feels sacred. Private, in the way a sunrise is private. You don't need to explain it. You just need to see it. There's a sense of completeness now. Not because someone handed you a medal, but because, for once, the applause didn't matter. One afternoon, while helping your granddaughter with a school essay, she asks you if you ever had a job. Oh, I typed. Mostly during the war. Oh, she pauses. Like important stuff. You look out the window for a moment. The light catches the edge of an old photo frame. One from your days in uniform, standing beside a desk with a typewriter that no longer exists. And you smile. Yes, very important. But most people never knew it. She wrinkles her nose. That's not fair. You chuckle. No, sweetheart, but it's all right. Because you mean it. It is all right. You've carried the comparison long enough to understand its shape. It doesn't vanish. It just quiets. And in that quiet, you realize what could have been yours was never really lost. The medal, the ceremony, the clapping, they were symbols. But your real worth wasn't carved into brass. It was stitched quietly into the fabric of 100 stories, each one whispered forward by someone who never knew your name, but lived because of your words. You write one final entry in your notebook. It's not dramatic, just a line. Even silence has authors. And you close it, not out of sadness, out of knowing. You don't remember the last time you needed to be seen. Not like before. Not with the same hunger. It's different now. Like exhaling after holding your breath for years you didn't realize you were counting. You wake early, feed the birds, fold the laundry the way your mother did. Tight corners, patient hands. Sometimes you catch yourself humming. Sometimes you speak lines aloud while alone in the kitchen. Phrases you once typed 1,000 miles away, in a cellar beneath the war. They rise like steam from an old cup of tea, familiar, lingering. You've stopped asking whether you were meant to receive that medal. Stopped wondering if someone else stole a spotlight meant for you, because comparison only lingers when recognition is the only mirror. And now, you have other mirrors, like the way your granddaughter copies your neat handwriting, or how your daughter asks you to edit her job applications, because your words just sound better, or how your husband, half asleep, still mumbles, couldn't have done any of it without you, even when he means to say something else. These moments don't clang like applause. They settle. They land. And isn't that what you really wanted? Not to be seen by everyone, but to be seen by someone. There are still flashes, now and then, when a co-worker of your son gets an award for a group project, And you hear him say later, "Honestly, Mom helped me with the idea." You smile. You say nothing, because you don't need to say anything anymore. Your old notebooks now live in a wooden box under your bed. Sometimes, on rainy days, you take them out, just to hold them, just to remember how much of the world once passed through your hands. There's something beautiful about leaving fingerprints in places where your name never went. Something freeing about knowing your words mattered, even if no one clapped when they landed. And in this life, in this moment, you're no longer chasing a ribbon across someone else's chest. You're not comparing, not aching, just present. No audience, no expectation, no missing medal. Just you, sitting by the window, watching the light shift across the room, feeling like, for the first time in all your lifetimes, you finally arrived back in your own story, no longer waiting for credit, no longer writing from the margins, just quietly, fully you. Outside, the sun begins to settle, not in a rush, just gently folding itself behind the trees. You let the light warm your face. You don't move to chase it. You've learned. You don't need to follow anything to be enough. The house is still now. Even your thoughts feel hushed. No medals, no applause. Just the memory of 1,000 sentences that moved through you, and the calm in knowing they reached where they needed to go. You lean back in your chair, close your eyes, and with the quietest kind of peace, something inside you whispers, you were never forgotten. You just took the scenic road to being found. You might not remember any of this tomorrow, but the dream will go on.